Hey, how's it going, everyone? Um, so I actually just got back last night from Florida. Our flight was canceled due to weather. We were supposed to be back on Sunday, but I'm back home, and that's all that really matters to me is we're here and we're all intact. So be it. Um, Despite the fact that we don't get along at all anymore, but I'm not gonna get into that. Um, I know I talk about a lot of negative stuff, I do. And it's going to be more of it today. But in addition to that, I will at least mention something positive. And that always happens to me on airplanes. Every single time for the last several years, I've been managing to get into this like meditative state on the flight. And I would have incredible visions. And I would interact with God, with Source. I would ask questions. I would ask to be shown things, and I would immediately be shown them. This used to be the case with me on a regular basis, and actually, I was just discussing this with the Mighty Mackerel just today when I did used to meditate frequently, every day almost. I would get these intense downloads and visions almost on a daily basis, 2015 to around 2017, after which I stopped for reasons that I don't want to talk about right now, but I channeled the wrong guy basically, and wasn't able to do it anymore really. But for whatever reason, on airplanes and on occasion, I can still get into that state where I see these profound visions that I'm just so not inclined to believe that this is just my imagination, because I would ask to be shown different planets and dimensions, and immediately things would pop into my head, and I saw really interesting creatures and beings yesterday, from fish headed sort of entities to wolf, dog like extraterrestrials. I saw a gas giant planet that had these kind of teardrop formations um, in like arranged in order, and within those formations was like this electrical energy that was very conductive. And you think it's just, it looks like clouds, but once you're in it, I was able to see that there was actually living entities being very much alive within those clouds. And they were very interactive, very interesting to see. I saw planets that had these planets completely entirely covered in trees, but these trees were interwoven together, interconnected, um, like a communication system. Our trees here also do that. I think they do communicate with one another, but this was like one giant organism fused into one. Like the whole planet was this group of trees, but it was actually this one big tree, really. They were all like dependent on each other. It was like cells making up a body. It was very interesting to see. There's this other group I saw that was very, uh, very evolved and advanced. And they had this very strange looking city. They were purplish in color, looked kind of so hard to describe. Nothing like I've ever seen in a movie, though, or what I would imagine an alien to look like. But they had arms and legs and a head like a humanoid form, but their structure was very odd and strange to describe. And they had this like these buildings that were like very organic looking, and they were structured to be fused into the planet itself. So kind of like the trees that were interconnected and interwoven into each other. these buildings themselves were actually part of the planet, and they were kind of inseparable from one another. And these are very telepathic beings, and they had this machine of some kind in this massive, massive structure that would kind of look like a shell, and it kind of looked like a crystal ball, maybe like a gargantuan crystal ball. And they would kind of like these wizard like people, or kind of like the higher status or whatever of their being, would look into this thing and they would observe the omniverse. And uh, I was able to, I think they were able to see our world, and they weren't happy with what they saw at all, which is no shock at all. But having said that, I'm just whether it's the Mandela affected Earth or not, it really makes me wonder if there's cosmic energies penetrating that are more easily accessible in the atmosphere than on the ground. So, or is it the pressure in the aircraft, right? Is it lower oxygen levels being up there? Oof, is it just my brain? I don't know. All I know is that I had downloads like that. I had information received instantaneously. I didn't conjure up or imagine this. It came to me like that, and I was just seeing these really fascinating worlds. And this is just something I yearn for and just can't wait to experience. Just feeling so isolated and so stuck and kind of claustrophobic and unable to move and unable to really be free in the truest sense of the word. Just feeling like being stuck in a flesh body. Um, it's it can be really hard on the soul if a soul yearns to be free. And but it is what it is. We're here. We're here for a reason. So before I go, there was one dream I remembered, which was very similar to another dream I had several months back. And for some reason, I got this feeling it has something to do with where I was in Florida. Um, it was very similar to this other dream. I am basically waiting to get into a restaurant, but I'm like in rags and I'm poor. But I feel like I have this reservation, and I see this juicy steak, and it seems like I'm with a significant other. And no matter what, I can't get into the restaurant, no matter how much I wanted to, how much I yearn for that steak. Every time I try to go in, I was blocked from doing so. So I then found myself surrounded in a different sort of landscape. It wasn't really a landscape, but it was a different situation. Um, I sort of came to this realization that I'm unable to get the steak because of what occurred around me, that there just were no more steaks. So I then find myself on a freeway, on a multi level, multi lane, large urban highway. And I'm walking along, and all I see is water around. There was no land anywhere. So, kind of similar to some highways in Florida, right? But you could still see land no matter where you are. And there was no land. It was just this highway, and it looked like everything was flooded. I could tell that there were structures underneath this water. And it was so eerily quiet and desolate. I couldn't hear a sound. There was no birds. There was no sounds, nothing. So I keep walking and I see these like encampments of people. And one of them was like, there were these women and they weren't wearing any shirts or bras. And they looked like they were just dying in this heat. Like the heat was overbearing. Like they were trying to sit on some chairs on this freeway and they're trying to shield themselves from the sun because it was just too unbearable. And I see them and I look at them and they look so ragged and so disheveled. And for some reason, this is going to sound really dumb, but I noticed particularly that they all had hairy legs. Now, you may think that this sounds so silly. Why would I mention this? But I don't know why. For some reason, I took notice of it in the dream that they all had hairy legs. They looked disheveled and they looked downtrodden and basically on the brink of death. And maybe I took particular notice of that because they're unable to do anything with their legs anymore, right? It's not very common to have that in our world today, right? So, since I took particular notice of that, I guess it was common then. And they were angry, they were upset. There were these little encampments, and I kept walking by them, and they kept being very hostile and treating me very badly as I would walk past these different encampments on the highway. No matter how far I went, no matter where I looked, everything was flooded. All that remains was this highway, and there was just no land all around. It was like a water world. And I remember seeing this man with a fishing pole, and he was trying to fish, but it looked like he was there for days and he couldn't get anything. And it was just absolute sense of pure desolation. I also got this sense that these people were waiting for help. They were waiting for a rescue, and they had like some people had these like things drawn out on the road, and they had like these big flags that would be noticeable in the air, but there was no help. Nobody was coming. There was no helicopters, there was no planes, there was no boats, there was no fish, there was no birds. It was absolute desolation. Take it how you will, guys. I don't know.